Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master, and today we're picking up where we left off last game with the invasion of genetically engineered super soldiers who automatically succeed without ever having to roll the dice, which makes them incredibly dangerous opponents. But before we get into it, smash like, make sure you're subscribed, and leave us a comment. That helps us out on our end with the YouTube algorithm, but also we love hearing from you guys. We've got an awesome community here, and it's all thanks to you. So thank you so much for being here. So, before we get into the story itself, from your point of view, it's probably been about a month since I posted a poll asking you guys, the listeners, if you thought that I should keep talking about dice rolls and game mechanics and stuff like that. And out of all the comments that I received over YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, not a single person voted to hear what was rolled on the dice. Although some of you were interested in hearing the actual game sessions. So I just wanted to address that really quickly. We tried putting a microphone on a card table and then we all sat around it and played the game that way, but the mic didn't pick up our voices. We've tried playing over Roll20, but I myself found that one to not be very user friendly. I had some friends who were surprised that I felt that way, but they were also kind of like tech support guys and stuff like that. So I'm guessing that their brain is just wired differently than mine. So they love it while I hated it. We've also tried Discord, and for whatever reason, it keeps muting us or kicking us out of chat. We have recorded a few of those games and uploaded them to the channel, but it's really frustrating because of all the technical issues. And I guess technical issues pretty much sums up all the problems we've had recording the actual game sessions. And then the other big thing is that it's a social gathering. So we prefer to play face to face. And then we can read each other's body language and we can, make a face or gesture or whatever. And it goes better that way. When we're just responding to a voice online without any of that other stuff, we aren't having as much fun. And it's a game, right? So fun is kind of important. Um, so for right now, I'm not really sure what to do about recording the actual game sessions. So if you guys can suggest a better microphone, one that we could just put it in the center of the living room, on a bar stool or something like that, and then everybody is sitting around on couches and recliners, and you know what I mean? And it picks us up from further away, then maybe I can, snag one of those for Christmas or something. But until then, we're kind of stuck with me just telling you what we did on Sunday afternoon when we got together in person and played, which brings up the next issue. As of me recording this, it is October. And like I said in previous episodes of the podcast, everything is recorded about a month earlier in case that I have a family emergency or something like that. And that's exactly what is happening with one of our players. As of me recording this, it's Monday, and yesterday was game day. And Brad told me that where he works, everybody just lost their job due to some sort of budget thing. And without getting too into it, he worked about an hour and a half south of where I live, and his oldest son went to school down there because our local school has a lot of issues with bullying. And the teachers, um, as I understand it, don't really do much to make that sort of thing stop, right? Anyways, so his son was going to school in Columbus, and Brad had been dropping him off at school every morning on his way to work, and then picking him up every night on his way home. Well, so now his son has to live with Brad's brother down there through the week so that he can keep going to the school where he doesn't get bullied. And that means that every Sunday night now, Brad has to drive his son to Columbus and drop him off for the week. And we've been playing on Sundays. The way it has been thus far is we've been meeting around 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, playing for a couple of hours. And then that game session gets turned into a video that you guys typically hear on a Tuesday. Then we would take an intermission and we'd grab something to eat and we'd kind of reset our minds. And then we would play a second game session that would be what you guys would then later hear on a Thursday. So Brad not being able to play on Sunday nights means we are probably going to be playing half as many games, which, as you've probably already guessed, raises questions about how many videos I can then upload to the channel. So we might have to drop back to once a week uploads, which I don't want to do, because the channel really does suffer when I go down to once a week. We don't grow as fast. I think some people get frustrated. I don't really want that. The alternative is if I can figure out how to record game sessions, then maybe Tuesdays could be like me summing up what happened. And then Thursdays, I would like upload the actual game itself, assuming we're able to record it. But like I say, as of me recording this, I'm not sure how to do that, and I'm not sure what we're going to do yet. But I wanted to tell you guys what was going on as soon as I knew anything and be as transparent as possible. So all that said, today's adventure was nothing but combat. So if you guys want me to leave out all of the, who rolled what on which kind of dice, that seems to be the consensus is you guys see it as tedious, and I get it. I totally get it. I don't mind that at all. But it makes this story then very, very short, right? So hopefully everybody has already seen the last couple videos. If not, take a moment to watch them first, right? That way I don't have to do a big, long-winded recap. The nutshell version, though, is that German scientists made these guys who just automatically succeed at everything. This allows them to hack any computer, pick any lock, land every single punch, right? So they are a huge problem, and there is a ton of them, right? Recently, we saw them fight the IST from 3rd edition GURP Supers, and the superheroes had their hands full trying to deal with these guys. So when this game session began, we were using HeroScape hexagonal terrain that is also stackable. We had a 4-foot by 4-foot table of that stuff, and we put a bunch of miniatures, black miniatures, on the board to represent the bad guys. So then a superhero named Umbra shows up. And for those who don't remember, our game has had multiple game masters over the years. My mom and Greg Sheets were the first two. Wayne Birch was the third. I am actually the 5th game master if we're going in chronological order. And before me, Jay Mora was the 4th game master. And Jay had a self-insert named Shadowstorm, who was his GMPC. Later in life, Shadowstorm changed his name to Umbra, which is kind of a long story. It's sort of like how Nightwing used to go by Robin, right? Anyway, though, so when Jay ran games, if things started to get really out of hand and the heroes were failing, he would sometimes bring in Shadowstorm / Umbra. And he was a little bit like Batman in a way, but he had super dexterity, teleportation, and electrical powers, like the ability to shoot lightning people. So Paco was very good at teleporting behind somebody, blasting them with a lightning bolt, and then teleporting away. He was also insubstantial. So when people tried to shoot him, their attacks passed harmlessly through him. We got that idea, by the way, from an old episode of X-Files, where the villain of the week had the same ability. And they said that apparently what keeps people from walking through walls has something to do with their atoms and electromagnetism. So we decided that if Paco had electrical control, he could do that, which kind of like added to his creepy ghost-like persona. You know what I mean? Jay also maxed out his character in GURP Supers with something that GURPS refers to as enhancements. So, for instance, one enhancement is effects insubstantial, which means that if Paco had to fight another guy who can walk through walls, Paco's lightning could still hurt that guy even when that guy is insubstantial. So Jay added that to under the lightning section on his character sheet, right? He also added an enhancement called effects substantial. So that means that when Paco is phased out, he can still hurt enemies that are solid by shooting them with lightning. Another enhancement that he added is area effect, which means that when he shoots a hexagonal space on our hex map, his lightning spreads out into each additional hex that is touching that first hexagon, right? And we saw that in this adventure where a bad guy would be standing in a spot and Umbra would call down lightning to hit that hexagon on the map. And the villains automatically dodge into the next hex, but now that space is also electrified. So they're still just moving into a new area to get electrocuted. You know what I mean? Another enhancement Jay added is armor piercing, which means if the bad guys have any form of armor, he ignores it. In the specific case of Umbra, the concept there was initially that your armor is electrified, so therefore you still fry. You would still take the full damage. But through the years, we altered that concept. So now the idea was like if a bad guy is wearing some sort of power armor that is insulated from electrical attacks, Jay's lightning can phase out, move through the armor, and then phase back in on the other side and still electrocute the guy in the armor. Another enhancement Jay added is continuous beam, which means that Umbra's lightning just keeps going. When Jay described that to me back in the day, the picture that I always had in my head was how in Ghostbusters, the streams look like lightning and it just keeps going, right? As opposed to multiple separate blasts that would be more like rapid fire shots, which, if he wanted to, Jay could actually do that too. Jay also added doesn't harm user, which means if someone were to reflect his own lightning back at him, he is actually immune to his own specific attack. Umbra also has an enhancement called Fan, which works kind of like the spread beam from Contra. It allows him to create a cone of damage that gets wider and wider the further away from him it goes. He also took homing, which means that he too can actually hit a target without having to roll the dice. He just says that he hits, which was also very useful in this game. Umbra also had a weird one called Ricochet, which means that he can bounce the lightning from one object to another, right? And then that worked in concert with an enhancement called Selective Effect, which means that Jay could hit bad guys and good guys with his lightning, but he gets to decide which ones take damage and which ones are immune that round. So let's say bank robbers were to take people prisoner, right? Jay could just hose them all down with lightning and have it so that only the villains are knocked out while the innocent bystanders would not take a single point of damage. So, having said all of that, Umbra pretty much teleports in and just starts hosing down the whole map with lightning. And it's worth mentioning that in GURPS, you only get the chance to dodge if you know you are being attacked. So when Umbra teleports behind somebody and hits them in the back, they don't get to dodge, right? So their automatic ability to dodge is taken away from them in this instance. And like I said, when you try to dodge into the next hex, it too has been electrified. So where we saw other GURP supers struggle, Hako was just stomping these guys, right? Which I loved. There's something poetic about throwing a bunch of villains at some players, having them struggle, and then having an old veteran PC like Umbra come in and just absolutely clean house, right? And he wasn't alone. In real life, Jay has a daughter who was born around the year 2000, give or take a little bit. But interestingly enough, right before Jay's wife found out that she was pregnant, we said in game that Jay's fictional counterpart had a son that was born around that time. And his name was Ethan Zachary Mora. He grew up to have the same powers as his dad, and he fights crime using the name Vortex. We ran some games with Vortex back around the year 2000, and then we honestly sort of forgot about him. So this was his reintroduction into the game, and he'd be roughly 25 years old now. And like I said, he was helping his dad stomp these guys. But that was it. Not much was really happening in terms of story. This one was just all combat. And then in the epilogue, we then had Ryan Miller's self insert show up. He went by Torch when he was younger, and when he got older, he changed his name to Pulsar. Jay and Ryan were good friends in high school, and then in game, their characters were good friends in high school, and they were on the same superhero team, which, by the way, was called the Continuum. Ryan was actually the team Gadgeteer. So in game, Torch slash Pulsar, shows up here at the end, and he says something about figuring out who created these genetically engineered beings, right? And where did they come from, right? And by the way, this is interesting to me. Maybe nobody else will care. I don't know. But in real life, Ryan had a son who was born in the early 2000s. Again, right before his wife found out she was pregnant, we had in game said that Pulsar had a daughter that was born at that same time. And her name was Karen Miller. And she went by the code name of Friction since she had powers like fire control and super speed and stuff like that. Anyways, to the best of my knowledge, this is actually the first time that I can remember, anyway, that all four of these characters were in the same place at the same time. In the past, we've seen, a couple of them together at once, but I don't think it's ever been more than that, which feels weird to me. It seems like a really obvious thing to do. But, anyways, so Friction and Vortex are hanging out for like the first time ever, right? Which I thought was cool. kind of a next generation kind of a vibe there. And then Ryan wandered off on his own to find the lab where these guys were created. But yeah, anyways, that was it for this one. We played it over Discord, and like I say, I kept getting muted or booted. So despite me loving what the game was about, this adventure was really frustrating to actually play. So if you guys have any suggestions about microphones to use, where we could record games in the living room, feel free to leave that in the comments section. Or if anybody has suggestions for some kind of recording software that is an alternative to Discord or Roll20, something for guys like me who are not really very computer literate, I'd be really into that too. And of course, while you're at it, make sure that you're subscribed. And as always, smash like. It really helps the channel out. And from all of us here at the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth, we hope you have a good one, and we'll see you in the next adventure.